Milana, and I am here with Deborah Henson-Conant, a composer, a mentor, an entertainer. We both play the harp, and that's why we call this Jung at Harp. Every week we come together with a question that we want to explore, and we invite you to join in our dialogue by adding your comments into the chat category. We're on a platform that, if it works correctly, we can see all that. And this is episode number 114, and we're going to talk today about how to ground and expand in both life and music. So DHC, you kind of came in with a thought about this. So would you like to kick it off here?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Kathleen. So I have this academy where I teach harpists how to improvise. And that's part of my life, along with composing. And part of the beauty of it is that I get to take all the ideas that I've been developing my whole life and then share them with others. And it's kind of like having seeds and getting to see how they grow in other people. And I was the every quarter there's a different way of looking at music. Like, for example, this quarter we're looking at creative resonance. The quarter before we were looking at structure is freedom, and the quarter that's coming up I call grounded expansion. And each of these refers to a certain way of looking at music or way of looking at the structures of music and how structure can create freedom. So when I look at grounded expansion, I'm specifically looking at the different ways that we can ground ourselves musically and then expand from there. And instead of feeling like we have to do a specific thing, like I have to learn this piece and I have to learn these specific notes, what's the smallest amount of music that we can ground into? And at the beginning of every class, I share something that all the members have started calling a snippet. It's just a little snippet of compositional possibility. And often I ask the members of the academy, well, what do you want? What do you want this to be able to do? Is this something you want to be able to tell stories with? Is this something that you want to be able to use in therapeutic music? And they will often describe, well, we want something mysterious and this and that. And then I'll create a snippet out of that. And yesterday I had been listening in YouTube to something. And so I had some ideas I wanted to try. I wanted to try this particular set of notes. But I also wanted to give my students something. I wanted them to give them something to do with their right hand. And as I started building this snippet, I started realizing that it was something that literally took me to another world, maybe a world that was in France. I don't know why. Something about the way that this little snippet comes together. It made me feel like dancing. And it was just this little tiny idea that was started off with something I'd seen on YouTube, 3 notes, and then the idea, I want to give something that's very easy to play with the right hand, and then what happens when you put them together and give them a rhythm and then have something alternately so that it becomes this grounding. You can always ground in just that simple thing, or you can ground in this, or the original, I could just ground in that. I don't. There's usually 2 things that I like to have to ground in: something and then something that goes away, and then we come back and we go away. And when we have that rocking of being one place and being another place, then we come back. And when we can ground, we can go much further. Then come back, we can go very far, we can go as far as we want to go. Then we come back, when we need to. And I found that as just the foundation of grounding and expanding, having a place to come back to, having something to come back to. So when we got together this morning, I was like, well, how does that look in the outer world? How would that look in other parts of my life? How can we ground? And why do I often ground in something that starts with one thing and then another thing? And sorry, people can't see my hands because I know that grounds people. One thing and then another thing. And as soon as you have both of those things, you can then take an adventure. Now, why is that? Kathleen, explain everything now. Why is that? Where do you see that in other parts of life? And why is it that I always want to have these two things? And then sometimes if I've done that for a while, and then I want to go someplace different. But then I come back and I'm at the beginning, and yet at a new place. And so it starts becoming music. At first it was just an idea. But then as I play it and I allow the feelings of it to happen and I ground in it and then I let it expand and I let it take me, I'm in that experience of music. Now, how do I do that in the rest of life?
Actually, the same way. You let yourself tap into the feeling, the deep feeling and passion and desire, and let yourself flow with it. See where it takes you. See what else comes up in response to it. You know, I was making some notes as you were talking, and I have so many thoughts here. One of the things that I felt when you first played this snippet is I was just aware of what it activated in my own body. So, of course, I have the embodiment circle at Online Sacred Circles that's all about working in community and having support and learning tools to really be in your body mind, to be in yourself. And that, in terms of the grounding and the expansion, is how we move forward in life authentically, is we're grounded in our own body mind. Sounds so simple, but it isn't necessarily simple. A lot of people, even though our body goes with us everywhere, really have no sense of being in their body or what's going on. So I think part of it is the tether as being in the body. I was hearing the tether in the music as perhaps being that first baseline, or perhaps the tether on the other side was the right hand snippet, which was in a way feeling as if it's pulling me up
Mm,
into something more. So I had the image of the tree, you know, that there's these roots deep in the ground no one can see, but then there's something being pulled upwards to the sky where other people see it. But what grows that other people see is very different than the roots. And so, again, and as a psychological corollary, we all have these 9 innate, inborn affects or emotions with strong body innervations that are kind of like roots. And we sometimes can just act those out without any filtering, and that usually doesn't work very well. Or we can somehow filter it up through the earth of who we are, through that sense of relationship we have with other people in the outside world, so that what grows, what gets seen, is something that can help us move forward in life. You know, the forward movement, if we're looking at the tree analogy, is in the branches and the leaves and the fruit, which then goes back to seed, goes back into the ground. And without the roots, that nothing grows. So I feel like I'm kind of
Oh,
rambling a
no,
little
no.
bit up
What
too
what I'm
much.
really loving about what you're saying is I'm getting the sense, I'm thinking when we are, when there's a static, but it's not static. There's a static form of grounding and expansion, which is like a tree, and then there's a grounding and expansion through time, and in time we cannot maintain. Nothing maintains in time. I mean, time is always changing from
Right,
moment to moment. So, in order to actually experience that rooting in time, we have to return to something.
that's
And
right.
then there is something that they talk about in music and also in vision, a persistence of vision. So I
Hmm.
remember when I was first learning about melody, and I was looking at, and I had never read music when I was a child, so I wasn't familiar with it on the page. And I remember saying to my teacher, "Well, how do I know?" He said, "Just follow the melody and the accompaniments underneath it." And I was like, how do you know? It's just a bunch of notes. How do I know whether it's a melody or not?" And he said, "Well, there's a note up at the top, and you can, so like, even though there's a lot of notes down here, at first when I was looking at music, I couldn't see the difference between this note and all the rest of
Mm.
them. It was just a bunch of, as they say, fly poo on a piece of paper. To me, that's what it looked like. And so he said, there's a persistence of hearing. You listen to that top note, even though on the page it just looks like all the other notes, but it's got a line and it's up here. And so, I can hear it, and then as I play it, of course, I can pull out, I can make it ring more, because I can sing it, with my hands. So that's what I was thinking, that this, that grounding in anything through time means returning.
Yeah, I mean, again, psychologically, it's about returning back to one's own felt sense in one's body mind. With music, it's returning back, in the case of yesterday, to the snippet.
Mhm, mhm,
I
mhm,
think
mhm.
sometimes when we think about the key and the key of a piece of music, we think about that as the root. That's the home. You're
Right,
coming
right.
back home. There's
A reference
that
point.
we a
Yeah.
reference point. We need a home base. And as you know, and you teach with modulating the modes, you can also change. You can move home. But if we look at trees, for example, although they are fixed in one environment, they reach out far away and they're interconnected with all other trees. There's the beautiful book, and I'm not going to remember who wrote it now, about the life of trees and how that all of the trees in my yard are connected to one another in the roots. So when one tree is cut down or gets sick, the other trees feel that. We don't. So so anyway, there's an interconnectedness, even though it appears static. So in some ways,
Oh, you mean even though it appears separate? So there's an
it appears
I
separate,
see, I
right?
see. So
Yeah.
I'm thinking about that because I'm thinking about the academy again. And,
Hmm.
there's what I'm teaching, but there's also the community. And the
Yeah.
community is so, impacted by other people in the community. And especially, although I'm grounding it in, like, these are the guidelines, like,
Mhm.
this is how we make it safe
Right.
for us to be vulnerable. And then I see people learning from each other, and I'm watching the way people are expressing themselves shift by having seen what other people are doing, and in the most powerful positive ways,
Yeah.
expanding. And in part because someone learns to do something, and then they show everybody else how to do that, and somebody else learns how to do something, and somebody else sees, like, what the possibility is. Now there's new possibilities, but we're always coming back and meeting on Mondays at a certain time, though it shifts a little bit, as the seasons change, and always coming back to the format. The format being, we start by learning a snippet, so we have it to play throughout the whole session, and then we're learning something, and then we're getting shares from people. We a lyric. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So this is Claire is coming up. I have no idea what it says. So we'll put it up there. A lyric I once heard from a fellow student years ago: "Tall trees can never be
Mm.
lonely, for they see far away." Oh, beautiful, Claire. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful. So part of our connection, part of grounding is that I'm hearing, because we know the taller a tree, the deeper its roots.
That's
And
right.
so the more grounded we are in something, the the higher we can go, the more we can see. Now, I do remember talking to my therapist. Let me just see if I can get our caption back. And who was talking to me about grounding, because I've been thinking about this a long time. And I was like, but I don't want to be a tree because I want to be able to move around. And so as you were talking, Kathleen, I was thinking about, so this is music, and I love this little theme, and I love the way it goes away from the theme and comes back. And I was thinking, well, how about what do I like to do with my hands? Do I like
Mhm.
to do this? Is this fun? When do I get to do this? Can I do it when I'm, if I observe myself in video, and I'm like, I'm always like grabbing, my hands are like grabbing. And I was like, what if I just spent more time doing this? Would my speech be more like that? Would I ground
Mm.
in that more than this? And so I was just thinking, I mean, my ears love this, but what if my hand could do something the same? Would I feel that if I just moved like this? I mean, you're the one with the embodiment circle.
Yeah, I mean, it's making me think about again Annie Murphy Paul's book, The Extended Mind. And for those of you who don't know that book, she's a science writer. And the subtitle of the book is Thinking Beyond the Brain. And she's gathered together all of this research over the last few decades that show that we're not mechanistic creatures, and that thinking involves far more than brain activity. And one of the sections in there, she talks about thinking with gestures, that when we make a gesture, it evokes a certain state in the body, which then affects our capacity to think. From a Jungian point of view, we can't think in the big sense of the word if we're not centered in ourselves. If we're caught in any one pocket of strong affect that's taking us over, we can't think. I mean, just recall when you've been in an argument with someone and you get really heated, and after the fact, you don't even remember what you
Right.
said. It's because you really weren't thinking. You weren't able to connect all the puzzle pieces to see the big vision, like the tree. And so, my thinking just went off the
All
rails.
right. Well, here's what I was thinking while you were talking. I will ground us, or possibly take,
Good.
maybe and maybe not. Maybe I'll be as you were talking. I was thinking about something that I heard on the radio recently, which was about AI, and I'm really interested in AI because I
Mm,
use it a lot. Often to get clarity on what the heck I'm trying to say. Sometimes I can put in what I think I'm trying to say, and AI will get back to me with like, "Well, this is what you're trying to say," and I'll be like, "Yes, exactly." But I was recently hearing about ways to that are becoming more comfortable to add, like, it's like adding electrodes so that you can do things with your machines, or something like that, so that I could, instead of having to reach out and touch something, I could actually think with my brain and touch something. And as I was
mm,
hearing that, I was thinking a bunch of things. First of all, like, wow, that's so great, because anybody who's had physical, can't physically do something, that allows them to physically do something. And then the next thought I had was, ah, but I have gotten so much in my life from my physical interaction with an instrument. It
mhm,
has changed the way I think, it's changed my physical ability and everything like that. But then my third thought was, well, w- and what would then open up in my brain and my physical capability if I was able to touch something without actually touching it?
mm.
What would that allow and open up? What would it close down? And so, am I grounding in my physicality? And how am I grounding in my physicality? But am I also where am I expanding? Am I holding myself back from expanding? Am I holding myself back from expanding because I'm afraid to make a mistake? I love this sound, and
Mhm.
yet I'm worried about what if I made the wrong sound? But what if I could come back to something I'm comfortable with
Right.
and then go away to something completely different and then come back? And at what point would I feel like I'm lost? If I have that harmony underneath, can I be free? Can I expand? What grounds me? Is it
Mhm.
the rhythm, the fact that the rhythm is there, or is it the harmony? Does the grounding have to be down at the bottom, or could it be up here? Could my bass move all around? Would that be ground? There's so many different possibilities. What was grounding me there? Was it the rhythm? Was it the what I was saying? Was it the idea? Was it the fact that I have this instrument? Was it that wasn't dancing? How am I grounding?
Yeah, and from my perspective, the grounding is happening in your body. It's the felt sense that you keep settling into with all that you're doing that is ultimately like the source of energy, the ball from which everything else is flowing. Um, I've had this thought two or three times. I was thinking about it as you were, from the very beginning as you were playing, I was thinking about the mathematical correlation of music
Yeah,
and the notes and how the Pythagoras talked about all this, and I'm not going to be able to in any way to explain it. But what I was um, thinking about and feeling, experiencing simultaneously was again the different places in my own
mm,
emotional nature and the felt sense or sensation in my body I was experiencing, whether you were down more in the bass, whether you were
mm,
up in the higher register. And of course, we know from science that the higher notes vibrate more quickly
right,
than the lower
right,
notes, the lower octaves. I
right,
should be saying octaves. And that there is a physiological, and there's a
right.
reality to that. There is, and so that in some ways, for me as a psychoanalyst and being all about embodiment, I think that anything we do, we want to be seeing what is the effect of it about how I live in my body. So much of what our culture suffers from
Mm,
is we don't value the limits of being in the body mind that we are, and we don't view it as a tree that can still grow magnificently. There are magnificent dogwood trees, there are magnificent oak trees, there are magnificent pines. They all are very different, in terms of how tall they're going to get, how fast they're going to grow, but they're all magnificent in their own right. And I'm a big advocate that if we're going to live authentically, we have to grow from the seed we are. And that doesn't mean that things can't be grafted on. I mean, we know there are hybrid trees and hybrid everything now where things get grafted
and there's
on.
Christmas
Sometimes
Christmas trees that are completely different than regular.
yeah, yeah, and sometimes the graft takes and sometimes it doesn't. So, that's getting into some a little bit different kind of expansion. But I'm a big advocate, and this is part of my work with my people one on
Mhm.
one, but also in the embodiment circle, that before we can start grafting anything on, you've got to grow into the fullness of who you are.
Well, this is what yeah,
And
I was thinking as you
yeah,
were talking that one of the big things one of the projects that we're doing in the school in Hip Hop Academy is called, Ambient Improv Exploration, and it's a project that many of us are doing in taking an idea and doing it every week. It's like a meditation or something else like that, and I was realizing that one of the things that people tend to do with music is to try to get it right and then try to get the next thing right. rather than taking something that's so simple and allowing it to get to you. And the whole concept of grounded expansion can happen in so many different ways, whether it is, like you said, to sense our grounding. For example, even one of the people is doing a wonderful experiment where for 5 minutes a day, she sits down, grounds to the earth with her feet, grounds to the heavens with the top of her body, and then waits until she feels connected, and then reaches out to the instrument and then just plays for
Mm.
5 minutes. And we've been following what what is developing out of that. She's not trying to develop anything. She went into it with no intention whatsoever. She took it on as a practice, and being grounding within that practice, it is now expanding. She's now started singing with it. It's opened up feelings of mastery, even for a second. So it's opening up new things. And I see that we can do that with music and improvisation. For example, another perfect example of grounded expansion is the piece Baroque Flamenco that I've been
Mm.
exploring for years. And what it has is a little melody. That's it. That's the whole melody. You can learn it. But then the fun of the piece is that it's got another structure that you alternate with it. And that's a descending bass line. And what's happening here, the thing that's grounding this is not what my right hand is doing, but what my left hand is doing. My left hand, everything comes out of that. I can play forever with that. I can make it twice as long, and now it's going down. I could add a rhythm, I could add a rhythm. It's still going down, so I could add all these things and then come back to the melody. And it becomes like a game that's grounded, and always you come back. And I developed it when I was learning how to improvise. I developed this game because I was playing in restaurants and I needed something that sounded like I knew what I was doing, but then I wanted to go to something where I could explore and expand. And then it became like a concept. So I'm kind of getting a field here. I think we're looking at um, what it is that allows us to ground in our lives so that we can then expand and experiment. And I am doing it, in the next quarter in the academy by literally giving structures that allow us and giving us time to get solid with those structures instead of trying to do something and then something better and better and better, 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 better. And this is what I came here today with, was like,
Mhm.
is it enough? And I have that a whole world could grow out of this. I have that if you take any of these structures and you followed it, it could lead to a whole world. You could take it down, and now you have a minor, you could add a rhythm. So I have that once you can ground in something that you come back to, that you repeat, and I think you have it in you. I'm using the harp as an instrument, and in your work, you're using the body as an instrument.
Well, the body is our first home. I mean, everywhere we go, our body goes with us. So our body mind then comes and relates to the heart. And what's interesting is there's research that shows that the part of the brain that lights up when you're with your instrument is the same part of the brain that lights up when you're interacting with another person. It is not the part of the brain that lights up when you're with an object, relating to an object. So there's something about an instrument, and I think the harp is such a beautiful example because we feel the resonance because it's against us, against our body. It's like relating to another person, and we know from Jung and other theorists that we get to know new parts of ourselves by interacting with someone else. We mirror things to one another. That's part of the art of conversation, is we learn from each other. You put things into words, I put things into words that, you know, we yet aren't able to. We help each other with that, so to speak. So the harp and instruments do that. So, you know, I think that we are always present, and particularly with music, I think the difference between people just kind of banging on an instrument and it being, you know, I don't quite know what to say, because a cacophony can also be music in the right place, but it has something to do with presence. You know, that if I sit down mindlessly and just improvise, it sounds one way, but if I sit down mindfully and like the Academy member who's grounding
Mhm.
and connecting
Mm.
and then letting it flow from her, it sounds very different. And in our life, when we stop long enough to ground in ourselves and see what are
Huh.
our body sensations, what are the emotions coming up with that, what are the images that are coming through, what thoughts are accompanying, then it's akin to that exercise where then when we move out to relate, whether it's to our instrument or to another person or to a creative project, we're in a very different state of consciousness.
I love that, and I know we have to stop.
Yeah,
So I would like to keep talking about this. I mean, this whole
yeah.
quarter in the Academy is about grounded expansion, and I have it that your your embodiment circle is also about grounded expansion. And so I'm gonna try something this week, and I encourage everybody to try it. I love this little snippet, so I'm gonna take it and allow myself to literally, like, go to a new dimension with it. Put on a
Mhm.
timer, connect to it, feel connected to it, and not need to take it anywhere. Let myself go somewhere with it. And I encourage
Mhm.
everybody else to do the same thing. And I have it that, oh, and I'm also going to explore this just movement of my hand just for fun to see what that gives me. And I'm going to invite everybody else to do the same thing, to pick something. If you play an instrument, pick a chord you love, that you just love the sound of it, and play it over. Allow yourself to play it over and over again. I find that it's helpful when I take something different, even if I like this, I love that. But if I take something, when I change one part of it, just so that I can hear the difference
Mhm.
between. So almost that lullaby, that rocking of one thing and another, and then the original thing. And I encourage everybody, or invite everybody, to take that. And I know some of you are here. If you would, say what you're going to try it with, whether it's a harp or whether it's a guitar or whether it's with you know the eggs that you're cooking each morning or whatever it is. I would love to know what you are going to take and explore. And Kathleen, what are you, I invite you, and if you take on my challenge, what would you be exploring?
Yeah, I'm going to commit to the ambient improv session. I'm going to do that. And the second thing I'm going to do, which I already do and I'm recommitting to it, is I'm going to take time in the morning and the evening to stand and imagine I'm in my long, tall body with deep roots reaching to the heavens and that the energy is flowing through. And I'm going to do that prior to doing my ambient improv
Oh,
practice.
beautiful. So you're going to combine
Yeah,
them. That's beautiful.
I'm going to combine
Great,
them.
and Claire is saying, "I love to improvise this way on my harp." Beautiful, that's great, Claire. And I love to hear people improvising that way, because I'm hearing them take music to a new place and letting them I'm hearing them explore, and that lets me explore. Kathleen, thank you, and I will look forward to seeing you again next week, and to seeing everybody else again next week, and then I'll be gone for a week to Wales, to the Wales International Harp Festival. I
Ooh.
know. And then we will be back. Thank you, Kathleen. It's just such a joy always to spend time. And thank you, Claire, and everybody else who's been here, and all the comments that we get. It is so wonderful to be part of this. Thank you, and go forth and harp on the good things in life.